Welcome to another edition of the Well and Good Podcast. My name's Jay Smack. You can find us online at wellandgoodpodcast.com. Email me at wellandgoodpodcast@gmail.com. And our mission here is just to put a little positivity back out into the world. We focus on wellness, goodness, nonprofits, and it's a pretty big umbrella. But we talk about just about anything that is having a positive effect, or even stuff that's interesting. You know, it's a big umbrella if we just open it once in a while. Today's guest is Ashley Mannell from Richmond Integrative Psychiatric and Nutrition Services. She has a new podcast called Nourishing Minds, and let's hear what she has to say. She's online at Richmond Food and Mood. Here's my conversation with Ashley Mannell from Richmond Integrative Psychiatric and Nutrition Services on the Well and Good Podcast. So here we are on another edition of the Well and Good Podcast. My name's Jay Smack. This whole thing started a few months ago when I was just trying to bring a little positivity into the scene. There's so much negativity and anxiety going on at the moment, both politically and otherwise. I thought, why don't we talk about stuff that's good for you, and nonprofits as well. And my guest on this episode is Ashley Mannell. Is that the... Yeah,
Mannell.
Mannell, okay. Sorry. I think I've always just called you Ashley, which is always easy to remember because it's my wife's name.
Oh, cool.
And you are a registered dietitian and nurse practitioner, correct?
Yep. I'm specialized in psychiatry, so I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner.
Okay. And you are with Richmond Integrative Psychiatric and Nutrition Services, correct?
Yeah.
And online at foodandmood.com, correct? Okay, cool.
You got it.
Maybe before we get into the guts of it, pardon the pun, maybe a little bit of your background and how you ended up in this field and what functional medicine is.
Yeah. So my background actually started out as a registered dietitian about almost 15 years ago. And I worked in a couple different settings. I worked at VCU Medical Center in their outpatient nutrition clinic, and also for a fitness and wellness center. And I felt that even though, I had I was able to help people kind of change their diets and teach them about nutrition, that was still never really enough. And what really made me want to go to become a nurse practitioner was working in the VCU's weight loss surgery program. And so I was working with people who were severely obese and qualified for gastric bypass surgery. And I would be with them on their journey from before surgery to, a year or two after surgery, and watch them kind of transform. They would lose just massive amounts of weight in that first year. And there was, they only ever followed up with the dietitians and with the surgeons after their surgery. And there was so much psychological change for them from just kind of, losing all this weight so quickly. And
a positive change or just
it would
change?
Be both. It would be positive initially, and then what I witnessed was so many of them started to gain the weight back afterwards, after a year or two, and kind of go back to, almost to what their pre-surgery weight was. And it's when I realized that this wasn't just about nutrition. It wasn't just about nutrition education. So I toyed with the idea of going back to actually become a counselor, but decided then to go actually into nursing. I felt as a dietitian, I couldn't help these people as much as I wanted, because it wasn't just about nutrition education. It was about so much more than that. So I felt like maybe if I become a nurse practitioner, I could be more effective with them.
No, you mean just people in general, or the people in this program who had the surgery?
People who who I was, people in general, but
Mm-hmm.
specifically the people that I was, working with at VCU.
How dangerous is that? And I don't want to go off on a tangent, but to have the surgery and then gain the weight back is.
I mean, it's, the surgery is pretty risky. I mean, it's not as risky as it used to be, but any kind of surgery like that is serious surgery. And, gaining it back is, your options are limited because you can't, in some cases you can redo it, but not in very many. So, and then just kind of basically like the health issues that come back with gaining, all that weight back. So I went back to nursing school at VCU and I did the accelerated RN to NP program. And I was going to be a family nurse practitioner thinking I'll be able to use my nutrition expertise, more as a family nurse practitioner. But I didn't love all of my clinical experiences. And what I did love was my psych rotation. And I also loved when I was working with patients in the hospital, just as, as a nursing student, I was always the most interested in their psychosocial background, like what had brought them to the hospital, why were they there, where were they going afterwards, what were their discharge plans, and so I decided to switch my concentration from family nurse practitioner to psychiatric nurse practitioner. So I finished that up in 2012, and I went out to work in a community mental health and also with a private practice in Midlothian. And I was ready to, really now as a nurse practitioner, and I could prescribe, and I was really going to be able to help people at this point. And so a few months in, what I started realizing was I was prescribing these medications to people, and they would work for a while, and then they would stop working, and then they would come back, and we were constantly kind of changing meds around.
And you're not into the nutritional aspect yet, correct?
Well, I was that first year that after I graduated, I was really trying to just kind of get, comfortable prescribing and learning. It's kind of, you're kind of thrown in there and learning, on the job. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that I was going to bring in the nutrition eventually, but I was first getting comfortable with that. And when I went to work in the private practice, that's when people started noticing on my bio that I had this nutrition background, and they would come and schedule the new patient appointments with me and said, I'm really interested. I saw your background. I want you to tell me how I can eat so I can improve my mood and not have to be on these medications. And so I tried, and I found myself struggling initially with that, which you would think, that makes total sense. Yes, they should be able to change their nutrition and feel better. But what I realized is I was so traditionally trained in nutrition and in psychiatry, I couldn't bridge those two worlds together. So in my nutrition training, which was very conventional and traditional, I learned about the food guide pyramid, and I learned about calories in and calories out, and counting carbs if you're diabetic. And then in nurse practitioner school, I learned how to prescribe meds. So I couldn't bridge those two worlds, and I was really frustrated because I kind of thought they would come together all by themselves. So I was struggling, and so I started...
You mean to help people?
Yeah, I thought I knew my plan as a psychiatric nurse practitioner had always been to use both. But when I found myself finally as the psych nurse practitioner, I was like, I don't know how to do it because I just didn't know. I couldn't bridge the two worlds.
You wanted to try to treat them with food.
Right. But in my nurse practitioner program, I'd learned about diagnoses and symptoms and treating symptoms and with medications. Mm-hmm. And then in my nutrition, I learned about, counting calories and just, it was so just rigid. Mm-hmm. So I was looking for something to help me figure that out, like how I could really bring in the nutrition. So I discovered functional medicine, and that completely changed my world, my life professionally and personally. And the reason is because functional medicine is a way of working with patients that looks for the root cause of their symptoms. So whereas I'd been trained to just treat the symptoms.
You're treating the chicken as opposed to the egg.
Exactly. Yeah. So now I had the tools. When I started my training, I was given the tools to really look for the root cause. And that made me really happy because I always had this feeling, okay, people are feeling depressed or they're anxious, but why? I didn't believe that it was just always kind of an organic, genetic.
Like beyond, they're having a bunch of bad days at work. You think there's a more granular root cause there?
There are. I mean, we know that depression there are 1,200 different conditions that cause depression and anxiety. But we were only ever taught in school how to just deal with the symptoms.
And block them with medication.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was what I was seeing was in these medications where I would prescribe and then there would be side effects. I would prescribe, to make the side effects go away. And then we would find the magic cocktail and that would work for a couple months and they would come back in and then we'd have to try again. And it was just this never-ending chase for the magic combination of meds. And I just learned pretty quickly that it didn't exist. So functional medicine, my training started in 2014, and it took me 2.5 years to finish all of the courses. And the more I was entrenched in the training and learning about it, and the more I would apply it to my patients, the more I just realized that really treating mental health is not about meds. It's about so many other things. And if the gut isn't healthy, then nothing is. And functional medicine really uses nutrition as the foundation for everything. And it was the perfect bridge for me. It was the perfect way for me to bring my two worlds together.
So you said nutrition is the foundation. Of course, I'm sure you also recommend exercise and plenty of sleep and all that. But
absolutely,
now we arrive at the gut-brain axis, and I'm the total layman. My perspective is all out of curiosity and what I've tried to put into practice in my own life. So explain the gut-brain axis and how the gut literally works in tandem with the brain to regulate these conditions, whether it's stress, depression, anxiety.
So the gut and the brain are always communicating together. You think of them kind of as this two-way highway where there are messages going back and forth all the time. And actually, it's not just the gut and the brain, but it's the gut, the brain, and the immune system that are really always communicating. So you have, we actually have more serotonin receptors in the gut than we do in the brain. So a lot, when we take a drug that affects serotonin, like many of the antidepressants do, people will often complain of GI effects, and that's why. It's because we have more receptors there. And they're always, what I tell my patients is, because they're always communicating, if something isn't right in one area, then it's going to affect the other. And it's true. And the immune system comes in because when there's 80% of your immune system is actually housed in your gut tissue. So when your gut isn't healthy, and that can happen for a number of different reasons. Just if you've been on the standard American diet for 35 years, or you've taken ibuprofen for chronic back pain for years, or you're on multiple courses of antibiotics as a child or as an adult. All of these things over time really affect your gut health. And as your gut health or your gut lining kind of loses its integrity and loses its ability to do its job optimally, so it doesn't digest as well, it doesn't absorb your nutrients as well, and if you're not even providing it great nutrients to begin with, it kind of stops being able to do its job and stops being able to act as that barrier between the outside world and in your body, and things start getting through your gut barrier that shouldn't be, and this activates your immune system. And over time, and this can take years in some people, you get this this process of inflammation.
Oh, yeah, but you hear all about inflammation these days.
And inflammation is really just your immune system's way of trying to kind of repair and kind of attack the enemy, and then your immune system's kind of supposed to go back to being vigilant but not hypervigilant. But when our gut is not acting as that really good barrier, your immune system's in hypervigilant mode all the time.
And
so
that causes inflammation? I mean, I get why when you sprain an ankle, it inflames because it's trying to isolate it and protect it. It's
clean it up. Yeah, so there's this inflammatory and right away. Like your immune system attacks and then isolates, and then it cleans it up, and then it's gone. But that system, like that feedback system, stops working when your gut isn't healthy. It loses its ability to kind of calm back down, and because it's on constant alert because your gut isn't able to kind of do its job well and act as that barrier. So then your immune system's kind of picking up the slack.
What's the difference then between feeling good, feeling great because you just ate a delicious piece of pie, and feeling healthy because you just had a vegetable smoothie? What are the two different reactions? You know what I mean? Because food can it makes sense that food can make you feel so good because of its connection to the brain.
Yeah.
But too much pie and you feel terrible.
Right. And so, I mean, that's what's hard, right? Is food makes us feel good for so many different reasons. So, if that piece of apple pie has, so much, so many great things associated with it. It tastes good. It's got a lot of sugar in it, which is going to raise your blood sugar, and it's got
a lot of gluten in it.
Yes, and it's going to help create serotonin and all that, and it's going to make you feel good for the first few bites, and then it's
that's
not.
when the inflammation kicks in.
Yeah, I mean yeah.
So it's a cycle.
So and then
So it's similar, but same but different.
So I mean, there's you can still have apple pie and still be healthy. But I think people's tastes have really changed. Our food supply has changed so much over the last few years. There's sugar in everything, and so our taste buds are just crave things that taste a lot sweeter than they need to. I think our kids are a good example of growing up on sugary cereals and sugary snacks, and their taste buds are just used to things tasting really sweet. So if you offer them a piece of fruit, it just doesn't taste as good anymore. And that's when we put all our patients at the practice on an elimination diet for 28 days, and they all come back saying, I thought gluten and soy or gluten, and dairy would be the hardest things to avoid, but it was sugar. So there's no sugar on the elimination diet, and we teach them to read the labels on foods, and any food that comes in a box or in a package. I mean, things you wouldn't even think of have sugar in them, even if it's just 1 gram or 2 grams. But you go and try and buy organic vegetable broth from Whole Foods. There's 1 gram or 2 grams of sugar in there. And so you think about all of the sugar that we're getting in, that we're ingesting from foods that we wouldn't even think. And over time, like our bodies get used to that, and our taste buds get used to that. And so the healthier foods that don't have, tend to not taste as good. And I have patients that come in and say, I just don't like healthy food.
And so that's big, I guess you'd call it big food, is conditioning us
Absolutely.
to, addicting us, I guess, to that.
Completely.
Sugar.
High sugar, high salt, high fat.
What about the whole probiotic, prebiotic thing, the attention to gut bacteria is really popular now. How does that work in, and what's the difference between probiotic, prebiotic, and is it good? Is it bad? I mean, because you hear that you have to eat a bunch of yogurt to replenish that, and then they say, no, it's bad. Don't stop eating the yogurt. Of course, it's full of sugar, but what's the whole deal there?
So the microbiome is hugely important in health in general. And that's kind of like the latest frontier in science and research. And we're still learning so much about it. So the microbiome, the health of your gut, is dependent not only on the integrity of that lining, but also on the ratio of all of the bacteria that inhabit the gut. So we have 2 to 5 pounds of microbes living in our gut at any given time. And I recently went to a conference and they said, we think that we are the ones hosting these trillions of bacteria, but actually they're the ones hosting us because we have them not only in our gut, we have them all over our skin. Mm-hmm. And we're really just now starting to learn the impact that they have on our health. I mean, they can alter our gene expression. They are responsible for so much. So making sure that the balance of the good bacteria outweighs, the less favorable or more neutral bacteria is important. But when you've been on the standard American diet for years, you're definitely upsetting that balance. You're going to be feeding the more pathogenic bacteria, and there's only so much room in your gut. So they're going to overcrowd the good, but we know are they really beneficial, and that also sends that message to your immune system that things aren't right and causes your immune system to go into overdrive. So the probiotics and prebiotics, you could take one. It's not going to do any good if you're eating a diet that's still really high in sugar and fast food, and it's not going to do anything. What's going to be key to really creating a healthy gut, a healthy microbiome is, lots of colorful, fresh fruits and vegetables that are, and other, whole, non-processed foods. Like that's what the good bacteria in your gut really want. So thinking about in functional medicine and in terms of healing the gut, creating that really ideal gut environment is important. So we do that through food.
A lot of natural food.
Absolutely. Yeah. Natural, unprocessed, high fiber, and diverse. So what's important, and I tell my patients this all the time, you could eat a pound of broccoli and a pound of carrots, every day and think that you're doing really well on your vegetable intake. But at the end of the day, what really matters is diversity. So it's better to eat, a smaller quantity, but lots of different colors and lots of different kinds.
And that's because you're getting vitamin K from here, vitamin D from there, vitamin A.
You're getting a lot of different phytonutrients. So those natural plant chemicals, that all the different colors provide all, have a really important different function in your body. And they all, the fibers in them and just the nutrients in all of the different ones are what help cause diversity in the flora, and that's what you want in the gut. So, in addition, taking a probiotic can be helpful, and more research is coming out on specific, strains of probiotics for depression, strains for, that seem to work the best for anxiety. But what you first have to start with fundamentally is a nutritious diet, that's, like I said, colorful and diverse and unprocessed and organic.
And so where do you come down on the large variety of diets that are around these days, whether it's vegan or paleo or, of course, everybody always says the best thing is just a well-balanced diet, but meat bad or good, vegan good, paleo, what's the deal?
So we've so in mental health, and we work with patients who are coming to us because they're depressed, they're anxious. We know what the research shows is a higher fat diet, to support the brain, support mood, a higher healthy fat, so fats coming from plant sources, or organic pasture-raised meats, moderate protein, lower carb, the carbs coming from your fruits and vegetables. We tell our patients that we don't like all the different labels, and every single person is so different. There's so much biochemical individuality that there's not, people really try to say fit themselves into these categories of foods. I'm paleo, or I'm keto, or I'm vegan, and it just doesn't. That may not be what's best for them. So we help them try to figure that out. We find that a strict vegan diet, when we're working with people who are struggling with mood, we do have a very honest conversation with them, about incorporating some animal protein.
What if the source of their stress is the fact that they've caused harm to another living creature?
And we take that into account. So we absolutely work with people who are vegan and honor that and try to work around that. But vegan diets also tend to be lower in cholesterol and things that your brain really needs. B12. So yes, you can supplement with things like that, but it can be a little bit harder, and it takes a lot of planning. So again, and it also comes down to an individual's makeup. Some people thrive on a vegan diet, and others don't do as well. So it depends. But I can, we are a little bit more, I have to say, honest and upfront about how if these are your goals and you really, you're struggling with mood, and incorporating a little bit of animal protein may help.
How about for athletes? I would imagine it'd be tough for an athlete, whether it's a cyclist or weightlifter or a football player, to be vegan because they're tearing down their muscles so often.
I think, there's lots of professional athletes who've done, who are able to be vegan and compete. I think it just takes a lot of good planning and discipline to make sure that you're getting adequate calories and adequate. It's hard, it's hard getting adequate calories sometimes. When the volume of food when you're a vegan to get adequate calories can be a lot. Which if you're competing or training, it's sometimes hard. But again, I think it just comes down to really knowing your body and knowing what makes you feel the best. And for example, we have people who go on ketogenic diets because that's kind of the craze right now. It was paleo for a while, now it's keto. And when people will say, I was keto for a few weeks and then I just started feeling really poorly, like my mood got worse, and it's like, okay, well, maybe that carb intake was too low for you and you need to increase it a little bit. And
it sounds like your patients, clients, that you need to take some time. It takes quite a while, I would imagine, to find out what's best for them.
It does, and that's why we work with our patients over a 6 to 12 month period initially, and we offer our services as a program so they understand that this is a long-term relationship and it's going to take us some time to figure it out. We start off with that elimination diet so that we can figure out, okay, which foods that you eliminated, once you put them back in, may cause those symptoms to come back. That once when you remove the food, like your congestion went away, or your acne cleared up, or your energy was better, and once you put them back in, those reappeared. So it is very personalized, and things change over time. It's for people change, our immune systems change, our stress levels change. So our food. Our diets are going to change too. So what we really encourage is people to be flexible with themselves. There's not going to be one diet plan or one way of eating that's going to be right for them for the rest of their lives. It's just so tempting to kind of fall on the next best, the next diet fad that comes out. But people just really need to kind of learn what works for them and not get so hung up on being in a category or in a label.
And I would imagine if they're coming to you in the first place, they're more engaged. It's not like they come back in 3 or 4 weeks and you say, you haven't been sticking to or advice at all.
Yeah. So we're very upfront with everyone, and we say, we were going to want you to do this elimination diet. We send them a copy of the diet after their first visit. So they do a visit with us, and in that first visit, we're trying to assess, are you ready to make these changes? Are you ready to do an elimination diet? Are you ready to do this testing so we can really figure out, okay, what is the root cause of your symptoms? And understanding that these are going to be lifestyle changes. Are you ready to improve your sleep hygiene and turn your phone off?
Sleep hygiene? What's that?
Your sleep hygiene. So your sleep habits. So what are you doing before going to bed? You say you're not sleeping well, you're struggling with insomnia, you have a hard time falling asleep.
But the TV's on.
The TV's on. Or you're on your phone scrolling, Twitter or the news, or, in your bed, and you're getting that blue light, which is activating, and all these things. Because again, we talk a lot about nutrition, but if someone isn't sleeping well or getting restful sleep, it's hard to really to put any of those changes in place. As I'm sure you know from having a few nights poor sleep, just kind of
it's the worst.
How awful
it's
you feel.
It's absolutely the worst.
And
speaking of things that affect sleep, where does alcohol come up in this equation?
So
or anything else for that matter.
So alcohol is one of the things that we have people eliminate actually in that first 4 weeks that they're working with us. And then they can reintroduce for us to see how does it affect you? Same thing with caffeine. People don't realize until they take it out, oh, wow, this does have an impact. Like I cut out alcohol for 4 weeks, and when I put it back in, I didn't sleep well. Alcohol absolutely can affect sleep, even if people don't think it does, but certainly quality of sleep. And for certain people, if they're struggling with certain health issues, then it's not ideal. But that's the same, with caffeine, people are, find that they're very sensitive to that. So we, if someone's struggling with not sleeping well, then we are definitely addressing alcohol, caffeine intake. And it may be that they can put it back in, but they may have, it may be like really one glass of alcohol with a meal on one night and not both weekend nights. Or, again, we want people to figure out what works for them. What's that threshold? It's the same thing with sugar. Like, how much can you, have before it becomes too much of a problem?
How about supplements, where you come down on that? And I'm sure that you probably introduce some supplements for some of your patients, but they're so popular, and people start popping all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether it's potassium or turmeric, like we talked about, fish oil, et cetera, et cetera.
So there are a few kind of basic supplements that we recommend that everyone be on. So really good multivitamin.
And you do recommend those? Because, some schools of thought say, oh, it's all crap. There's nothing in them. You don't get anything from them. You're better off trying to get it from your food. So yes, you cannot supplement your way out of a bad diet. We're the first ones to tell you that. So, but even with a perfect diet where it's just full of, your diet's perfect, it's clean, it's organic, it's colorful, it's, unprocessed, our soil is not nearly as healthy as it used to be. I mean, it's not nutrient rich like it used to be. It's depleted. So even if it's locally grown and it's organic, that soil that your beautiful tomato was grown in is just not as nutritious. It's not as nutrient dense. So therefore, our food supply is lacking. It's not as nutritious as it was 50 years ago. So we're still, there's still things that we need to supplement. And so, so I say a good multivitamin just to cover your bases, but maybe it's like 3 times a week instead of every day if you feel like your diet's, if you're really right on with your nutrition. A good fish oil supplement, or omega-3 if you don't do fish, but a good omega-3 is important. And then, we will, also a probiotic can be helpful. So those are the base ones that we'll have people kind of start off with. And then where we use supplements is once we get the lab work back. We don't
believe that people need to be on 18 different supplements. So we personalize it. We wait till we get their lab work back, and see what we're dealing with, what's going on in their gut, and we use the supplements to really target, what it is we want to target, and it's short term. Now, when people are struggling with insomnia, there are some great natural supplements that can help with that or with anxiety. But again, it's really short term so that, until we kind of get things back in balance. And if, turmeric has been shown, there's a lot of great research on turmeric and what a powerful anti-inflammatory is. So there are, but I think people really need to focus on food first, and not, and you have to also be careful. The supplement companies, and there's so many, they're not regulated. Yeah. So we work with really high quality companies where, and a lot of different ones because they have certain.
Can you mention any of them, or is that something? That
we work. I mean, we work with Zymogen. We work with Pure Encapsulations. Apex. So a lot of these are available. You can only get through healthcare practitioners.
Is someone snoring over there?
Yes, that would.
You've got your dogs with you.
My dogs here, and yes, that would
Sorry,
be Luke.
Didn't mean to
No. So we work with. Yeah, so you're better off. Also, the quality of the supplements makes a big difference because and what you can buy maybe at CVS, you're not sure if it actually has everything in it that it says it does. And sometimes when you do get higher quality, you're
getting
more potency.
Why is that not regulated? That blows my mind.
Yeah, I'm not. It's none of it.
FDA
does not regulate supplements.
Wow.
So, yeah.
How about fermented foods? Those are real popular these days. I like to throw some sauerkraut in my vegetable smoothies. How do they affect the gut health, and what role do they play?
So again, fermented foods are a really good source of probiotics and prebiotics too, and so the prebiotics help. The prebiotics help. Kind of.
What's the difference, pre versus pro?
So the probiotics. I don't even know if I can explain this eloquently or not, but we can
bail on it if you want.
Yeah, they're different. So your probiotics are like different strains of certain bacteria. So Bacillus and Bifidobacterium and things like that. Your prebiotics are things like inulin, chicory root, and they help. They just kind of help. Create this really healthy environment. They help create short-chain fatty acids in your gut. They're a different source of fuel for the bacteria and the microbes. Okay. So they don't, the probiotics, I should have prepared more for that question.
Well,
you get them naturally from your food, the prebiotics, whereas probiotics is something you would supplement more.
How about another popular term, polyphenols, where the olive oil, right?
So polyphenols are really good for your brain, and you'll find them in red wine and blueberries.
Oh, that's right, red wine. Yeah.
And they're just another nutrient, an antioxidant. So they're good for heart health and brain health and inflammation. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think tart cherry juice is good for inflammation. Yeah.
Yeah. So also, they help, support your liver. They're good for your brain. They're good for cardiovascular health and all sorts of.
You touched on the soil a little while ago, and maybe this is another tangent, but how does factory farming and even hydroponic farming influence the nutrients that we're getting in our food now? You were saying that what we're getting now just isn't like the soil that we were getting, years and years ago, or when our pioneer ancestors were cultivating all their own crops. Is that having a role? All this the factory farming and the richness of the soil.
Yeah, I mean anything that's conventionally grown. So you're talking about produce. When it's conventionally grown, it's can be genetically modified, and so that it becomes resistant. It's to pests, to fungi. So that can affect the nutrition of, so the GMO, that can affect the actual nutrition of the plant or the seed or the food. But then, because of everything that they're spraying on the crops to make them resistant, that ends up getting into the soil and affecting they're spraying, and they're spraying Roundup to kill the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
The glyphosate from that is getting into our soil that then leaches into our drinking water. So the more chemicals that are used to kind of grow the food that we want, and we go to the store and we want the pretty looking apple and the pretty tomato, and to get that, that fruit looking the way people want it to look at the grocery store, it's not.
Yeah.
If you look at the organic stuff, it's not usually as pretty as a conventional. So, and also because our produce comes from, you can, our apples in the, wintertime come from New Zealand or from really far away places. They're picked before the peak of ripeness so that they can ripen in transit, so that by the time they arrive to us in the grocery store in Richmond, they may not even be completely ripe, but they're really close to it. So they're picked really well before they're ripe, and just because of that, they've lost a lot of their potential vitamin and mineral content. And then also in transit, that causes them to.
It reminds me of the avocados you get in really nice Mexican restaurants. They're always perfectly ripe.
Yeah, I know.
I miss mine by 12 hours, and they're all brown.
I know.
I love avocados.
I didn't really talk about the soil, but it's this, the factory farming, and then if you're talking about factory farming of animals, that's a whole other problem.
I was actually getting at the GMOs and how they're speeding up the growing of produce and growing it on a much larger scale.
Yeah, and it's very contaminated with pesticides, and so there's actually a great website that I recommend people go to, and that's the Environmental Working Groups. It's www.ewg.org, and they have a great list, and they just recently updated it this year. It's called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. The Dirty Dozen are the 12 conventionally grown fruits and vegetables that you should never, ever, ever buy, just because even if you wash them, they're still going to have residues of pesticides on them.
Look that up right now.
And then the Clean 15 are the conventional ones that are safe. You still need to wash them, but they are safer. They just have less. They're a little bit more naturally resilient to pests and fungi, so they don't need to be sprayed as heavily or as often.
Let's see here. See if I can get to it. I'm very curious about that. Oh, while I'm doing that, I mentioned smoothies a little bit ago. I like to throw a bunch of vegetables, maybe a little tomato juice, and make my own smoothies and get a bunch of vegetables that way. Mm-hmm. Is that just as effective? All you're doing is pulverizing them, right?
Yeah, as long as it's, if you're pulverizing the entire vegetable,
not
then,
juicing.
Yeah, I think you're getting all the benefits to it. So it's a great way I encourage smoothies. They're an easy way to get a lot of good nutrition in.
I'm looking at it, yeah. 30 dozen, and several of my favorite ingredients, spinach and celery.
Yeah. So those would be ones that I would just always choose organic.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Those are conventional, so as long as they're organic, then you're fine. But
and you can usually be pretty sure that if it says organic, you're getting
yeah.
That is regulated by the FDA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my! Look at all these. I encourage people to go.
Yeah. So
look at that.
Yeah, you have to be a very proactive consumer of your because if not, then there's the Europeans actually have stricter guidelines on what can and can't go into the food supply than we do in our country.
This is all fascinating, and it seems to be pretty straightforward. And the reason I bring this up is because this is a wellness-based podcast, and the medical community might look sideways at some practices because they're untested. But does the mainstream medical community pretty much embrace functional medicine in this way? Not really?
No. Well, I mean, if mainstream, you mean conventional?
I guess
no,
what we're used to, I guess.
No, I mean, I think they're going to have to, because patients are wanting it more. I think the conventional model and the way I was trained, as at VCU Medical Center, which is a great institution, is very much, what's the symptom? Here's the medication that goes for it. It's a very reactive way of dealing with health. So let's wait until you have full-blown diabetes or you have prediabetes to start treating you with medication. But they don't have time to have the nutrition discussion with their patients. And that's just because of the whole insurance system. They don't have the time. They also don't have the knowledge because they don't get it in medical or nursing school.
Is that due to inertia or more other influences such as, powerful lobbyists?
I think it's the insurance. You're not going to get reimbursed as a doctor for spending an extra 30 minutes with your patient discussing nutrition, and so that's, but people are realizing that the medications are not, people are tired of being on medications. They're still not feeling well. And the other problem too is that we're so siloed in the medical community. So there's all these different specialists. You may be an individual that goes to see your cardiologist and your gastroenterologist and your OBGYN and everyone is just kind of looking at you through the lens of their specialty and just addressing the symptoms that falls within their organ system and not addressing how it's affecting everything. And in functional medicine, we know that the body doesn't, our organs don't work in isolation of each other. It's this whole beautiful web. And when you touch one part of the web, the rest of it is affected. You take one medication and it has effects throughout, And the conventional world, I think it's become so specialized that it's not looking at people or, an individual as a whole anymore. It's too focused on
and your
just
point
what's
about
going on in your gut.
Our bacteria hosting us.
Yeah.
Not the other way around. It speaks to that.
So I think it's
definitely a system.
Yeah, functional medicine. And we are, at our practice, we are all trained, we have a very firm grounding in conventional medicine. I think that's important because when things come up in the testing and this is not just a nutrition issue or, there's something serious going on in the gut, you need to, we can spot that. We know when it's, okay, this requires a visit to the gastroenterologist because you need to have a colonoscopy. So we don't discount conventional medicine at all. We are all at the practice from that world and we're grounded in it and it serves us well. But having all gone into functional medicine, we now have these other tools that are, that help us really get to the underlying cause of why people aren't feeling well. And sometimes people still need to take medications. We're not anti-medications, but there's so much that can be done to really get people feeling well. And we've lost touch with that in medicine. So we've lost touch of the fundamental things that people need to be doing to be healthy. So.
That seems like a good place to end it.
Yeah.
This is fascinating. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Ashley Mannell with, I want to get this all right, Richmond Integrative Psychiatric and Nutrition Services, LLC, online at richmondfoodandmood.com. Go see them.
Thanks.
Cool. Thanks. Thanks again to Ashley Mannell of Richmond Integrative Psychiatric and Nutrition Services, online at Richmond Food and Mood. Thanks to Ashley for coming in. And Ashley and Courtney Harden now hosting the Nourishing Minds podcast. Look for that to go up very soon. Actually helping them out with that, as podcast production is one of my things, as it is one of the things of all of us down at Red Amp Audio. So hit me up at wellandgoodpodcast@gmail.com if you have any questions. wellandgoodpodcast.com for information about this show and the show notes. And until next time, be well.